Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're cutting right to the heart of wealth preservation in South Africa.
We really are.
We're talking about the trust. It's supposed to be this powerful tool designed to safeguard your family's wealth.
That's the promise, absolutely. But we've been looking at some source material that reveals a hidden crisis.
A crisis.
A big one. Many trusts, and these are ones that look perfect on paper, they just completely fail the moment they're actually tested. By death, divorce, you name it.
And the financial cost.
Yeah.
It's staggering. The data we reviewed, it showed combined losses of R87 million.
From just 7 families.
Just 7 families who thought they had done everything right. And these weren't some, exotic legal loopholes.
No, not at all. They were failures rooted in ordinary, everyday oversights. It's a fascinating paradox, really.
How so?
The strength of a South African trust is immense. It shields assets, it manages succession, but if you don't maintain it, if you run it like a personal piggy bank, that powerful tool becomes the very thing that destroys the family's wealth.
Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission today is to turn these really costly pitfalls into a definitive checklist for you. We are going through the 7 deadly trust mistakes.
And if you have a trust, you really need to listen to these stories.
For sure. So let's start with how poor maintenance can just sabotage the whole thing from the get-go.
Mistake number 1, the set it and forget it trust.
I think this has to be the most common one. People think creating a trust is like planting a tree, right? Just do it once and let it grow.
Exactly. But the source material, it describes a trust as a garden. It needs constant tending, especially as laws and your own life change.
So give us an example.
The case of Johannes van der Merwe is perfect. He set up his family trust way back in 1998. Back then, his business was worth maybe R2 million.
Oh.
By the time he passed away recently, that same business was the family's main asset. It was worth R45 million.
A huge success story financially. So where did the trust fail?
It failed because the deed hadn't been looked at in 25 years.
A quarter of a century.
Yeah. And the original investment clause was so rigid, so outdated, it only allowed for investments in things like, and I'm quoting here, blue chip, JSE listed shares and government bonds.
But the main asset was his own private company.
Precisely. So those R45 million worth of shares were technically an unauthorized investment under the trust's own rules.
Unauthorized. Wait, what does that technicality even matter?
It matters a lot because it exposes the trustees to personal liability and throws the whole thing into a kind of legal chaos.
And the consequences.
Devastating. R1.8 million in legal fees just to get a court to approve the structure. Another R890,000 in unnecessary tax. And maybe the worst part,
What's that?
all his grandchildren born after 2005 were completely excluded.
No.
Yes, because the definition of beneficiaries was never updated.
That is just a colossal cost for a piece of paper that could have been updated for a few thousand rand.
It is. The key lesson here is you have to review that trust deed every 3 years, minimum, or right after a major life event.
Births, deaths, a big change in the business.
Absolutely. A 25-year-old document just can't govern a modern R45 million asset.
That connects directly to the next point, which is another structural trap. Mistake number 3, funding the trust later.
Right. Why maintain an empty safe? It gives you this completely false sense of confidence.
I could see that.
Take the story of Peter Botha. He had a perfectly drafted trust set up specifically to reduce estate duty, but he kept putting off the most important step.
Actually putting the assets into it.
Exactly. He kept saying, I'll deal with the transfer duty and the CGT next year.
The classic procrastination. I'm sure a lot of people listening are sort of nodding along right now.
And then he died suddenly at 52. His personal estate was R45 million. The trust's estate.
Let me guess. 0.
0. And because the trust was empty, his whole personal estate was hit with the full force of death duties.
So what was the final bill on that procrastination?
Over our 10.5 million.
Wait, 10.5 million rand gone. Just because he didn't sign the transfer documents.
Yeah, just for that. Our 7.6 million in estate duty, our 2.1 million in executor fees, almost our 900,000 in capital gains tax.
Wow.
All of that money could have stayed with his family. The lesson is so clear. The known costs of funding your trust today are so much better than the punishing, mandatory costs of death duties later.
That's a powerful reason to act. Okay, let's shift from maintenance to documentation, which brings us to mistake number 2. Nominee shareholders without proper documentation.
This is such a trap for business owners. You think a handshake agreement is enough, especially with family.
The Naidu nightmare, as our source calls it.
A perfect name for it. Rajesh Naidu had his wife, Priya, holding R28 million in property company shares for the family trust.
So it was just a verbal understanding.
Pretty much. Maybe an informal note here or there, to try and avoid the transfer duties up front. So on paper, the shares were in Priya's name.
But the intention was for the trust to benefit.
That was the intention, but then the marriage failed. And Priya's lawyer, quite correctly, argued that since the shares were legally in her name, they were her personal assets and part of the divorce settlement.
And the verbal agreement
Meant nothing in court. The family trust provided zero protection for R28 million in wealth.
Zero.
Rajesh had to settle for R11.5 million just to get some of it back. It shows you a trust demands formality. Handshake deals are fatal.
So what do you need?
Ironclad documentation, signed on day one. A written declaration of trust, loan agreements, board resolutions, trust resolutions. Without that paper trail, the court just defaults to personal ownership.
Paperwork is preservation. Okay, let's move into governance. This is where I think family loyalty can really clash with legal duty.
It's where things get really interesting.
Mistake number 4, the family member trustee disaster.
It feels natural, right? Keep the governance in the family. But it creates these unmanageable conflicts of interest.
The Peterson family war.
A textbook case. David's trust had himself, his wife Anna, and their eldest son Michael as trustees. After David died, Michael, who was also a beneficiary, started running the show.
Taking aggressive risks.
Big ones. Which led to a R12 million direct loss. So his younger brother, Luke, sued him.
On what grounds?
The argument was that Michael, the beneficiary, who wanted to prove himself, overrode his duty as Michael, the impartial trustee.
And the result?
Wasn't just the R3.7 million in legal fees. It was an estimated R22 million in total value destruction. And the family. Completely fractured.
The lesson there feels profound. The beneficiary wants benefits, but the trustee has to be impartial and protect the capital.
Exactly. And when one person wears both hats, conflict is almost guaranteed.
So what's the solution?
You need structural impartiality. Bring in at least one independent professional trustee. Yes, they charge fees, but think of it as insurance against family warfare.
That makes a lot of sense. And that brings us to the last governance mistake, the one that makes the whole structure a legal phantom.
Mistake number 5. Sham trusts that aren't really trusts.
This is where SARS gets very interested.
Very interested. The whole point of a trust is its independence. If it's just your alter ego, the protection collapses.
And Andre de Villiers
Ran his trust like his personal bank account. Made unilateral decisions, no minutes for meetings, used trust money for holidays, all without formal loan agreements.
He was treating the trust's R31 million in assets as his own money.
Exactly. So when he died, SARS successfully argued the trust was a sham. It had no independence.
And then what happens?
They added the full R31 million from the trust back into his personal estate for the duty calculation.
Oh, that's a huge blow.
It resulted in R6.9 million in estate duty, plus another R2.3 million in penalties and interest. So an R11 million loss purely from bad administration.
So there's a simple test for listeners.
There is. We call it the red flag test. If
Yeah.
your trust does exactly what you want, whenever you want, with zero oversight or collective decision-making,
And that's probably a sham.
SARS will certainly think so. A trust has to act like a trust. Documented meetings, collective decisions, proper records.
Let's get to our final category, which is all about timing. The pitfalls that really show up as you get older. Mistake number 6, ignoring the 7-year rule.
A classic late life planning mistake. Sanjay Mugli transferred his R38 million portfolio into his trust when he was 71.
His goal was sound, I assume, reduce his estate duty.
It was, but unfortunately he died just 3 years and 7 months later.
The clock ran out.
It did, because of the Estate Duty Act. The 7-year rule basically says if you donate assets for no consideration and you die within 7 years...
They get pulled back into your estate for tax purposes.
Exactly, they get attributed back. So get this. Sanjay paid R4.2 million in capital gains tax up front on the transfer.
Yep.
And then his estate paid another R8.6 million in estate duty because those same assets were pulled back in.
So he paid tax twice on the same assets.
Yes. He was significantly worse off than if he'd done nothing at all. It shows why estate planning is a marathon, not a sprint. Late life transfers need very different, very specific strategies.
Okay, finally, mistake number 7. This one is about what happens next.
No succession plan for trust governance. The trust might hold a brilliant business, but who actually runs the trust when you're gone?
The Schultz family tragedy.
A perfect and sad example. Willem's Trust owned a R67 million manufacturing business. When he died suddenly, the only trustee left was a 73-year-old attorney who didn't want the job.
And the trust deed.
Had no clear process for appointing new trustees. The family was deadlocked.
So the business was just paralyzed.
Completely paralyzed. For 18 months, there was no quorum, no big decisions could be made, no major contracts signed.
What does that do to the value?
It was a disaster. They lost our $8.3 million in revenue, and the business valuation dropped from our $67 million down to our $48 million.
That's our $19 million of wealth destroyed, just from a lack of succession paperwork.
Just from that. The trust deed needs to have a clear plan, automatic successor trustees, qualification criteria, and a trust governance manual, a letter of wishes.
Certainty and chaos is manufactured, not inherited.
You've got it. That documentation is the backbone of the whole thing.
So after all that, what does this all mean for you listening? We've seen these 7 mistakes, from outdated deeds to bad timing, cost these families our $87 million.
And that's just in a handful of cases.
Right. And avoiding these errors isn't just about saving a bit of money. It's how you actually get the massive benefits a trust is supposed to provide.
The asset protection, the tax efficiency, the stability, they only happen if you do the work.
I think if you have a trust, you have to assume you might be making one of these mistakes right now.
You have to. The difference between preservation and destruction could just be a few signed pieces of paper and some proactive compliance.
And that proactive compliance is exactly the solution our source material points to. There's a trust consultant, Lumka Storman, who specializes in reviewing structures specifically against these 7 mistakes.
Right. And it's not just about finding problems. It's about optimizing what you already have to make sure it delivers the security it was designed for.
So if these stories has, hit home and you're worried about your own structure, a strategic audit is essential.
It lets you identify and quantify your risk.
And for anyone listening who needs to urgently figure out their vulnerabilities and get a real action plan, you can book a strategic trust review call with Lumka Storman.
I should mention, these calls are very focused, very intensive.
That's right. So they only offer 8 spots per month to keep them exclusive and thorough.
You can find out more and book one of those limited spots at www.lumkasturman.com.
That's www.lumkasturman.com.
So to wrap this all up, let's leave you with one final thought. If the whole goal of a trust is to provide certainty in the face of chaos, death, divorce, financial trouble,
then why on earth would you rely on documents written decades ago?
Or structures built on nothing more than a verbal promise?
Certainty is manufactured. It's not inherited. So take the time to audit your structure and manufacture that certainty today.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Go check your trust structure before disaster strikes.
See you next time.